Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about the 10 best shooters on the NES. So really quick, I picked these games from my own collection. So if I didn't have it in the collection, that's probably why it's not on this list. I also chose a couple of games that I had on the Famicom because I don't have the NES version of those, but I have the Famicom version because the Famicom version was a lot cheaper to get. Those two are Gun-Nac and Scoon. So we start off our list with Gun-Nac. This is probably the best shooter on the NES. It's not my favorite one, but it's definitely the best one on the NES, at least in my opinion. This game has a really cool power-up system. You have 5 total power-ups you can get, and it kind of feels a little bit like a personal preference on which ones you want to use. At least that's how I felt. I'm sure if you get more into this game, you'll find which one is the best, and there'll probably be a little bit more strategy to it, but for me, I just found the one that worked the best for me and stuck with it. You also have a number of super weapons that you can pick up as well, and the game just overall feels like a lot of fun. It felt really easy until I died once, and then I got sent back down to the base power, which makes sense. You lose all your power-ups when you die, but you felt really underpowered for what you had to do. That's probably the only thing I didn't like about this. Other than that, it's a spectacular game. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with Gradius. I really like the game in some ways. It's fun to play with a friend, but it has all the tropes of being an arcade port. It gets really frustrating at times. There's a lot of level memorization that you have to do with this, and yeah, it can be very annoying to play through this. It really helps that you can use the Konami code for this, and it gives you all the power-ups, which I desperately needed when I was going through this, because I'm terrible at Gradius, and it's one of the more frustrating shooters I've ever played. It is fun to play, but man, I am really terrible at this one, and it gets very frustrating trying to play through it. I like Life Force a lot more than I like Gradius. This is a spin-off from the Gradius series, and it does kind of mirror that gameplay quite a bit, but I really love this one a lot more. It improves on everything from Gradius. It's just absolutely wonderful. I do like that, again, the Konami code can be used with this game, like it can with a lot of different games. But with this one, it also gives you 30 lives, similar to what it does with Contra. I wonder how many people just stumbled across this, like when they were playing it. Like if they put in the code for Contra, they got their 30 lives, and then they tried to use that same code with other Konami games. I'm sure somebody did that before they got Nintendo Power, because one thing that some people tend to forget, not everyone was subscribed to Nintendo Power, so you didn't always know what was in there. Anyway, Life Force is just an absolutely wonderful game. Similar to the way I found out about Gun-Nac, I hadn't heard of Scoon until like the mid-2010s. I just never heard of the game. And I ended up seeing, I think this one was a video review. I think Gun-Nac was on a Hidden Gems list, but Scoon, I'm pretty sure it was a review. And I thought it was really interesting, decided to look it up, and found that that I was kind of priced out of getting the cartridge, so I tried for the Famicom cart, and yeah, that one was a lot cheaper. So in this one, you play as a submarine, little pink submarine, and you shoot a bunch of aliens that have taken over the world, but you're underwater, so the whole game is an underwater level, which is kind of annoying because underwater levels suck, as most people know. You also have to rescue people and fight off a bunch of killer whales that are trying to eat the people that you rescue. It is a lot of fun, but a very frustrating game. We're getting kind of Konami heavy here, but Stinger is an awesome game. I really, really love this. It's basically a Shoot'em up, which is a shoot 'em up, but adorable. Kind of like how Scoon was. But Stinger is really amazing. Another game I came to kind of later on, so I didn't get into this one until really like the last couple of years. And yeah, it's so much better than a lot of the other games that I've played. I don't know why I gravitated towards this. Maybe it's the shifting in perspective from side-scroller to top-down. Maybe it's the weird bell power-up system that confused the hell out of me when I started playing, but then I started really enjoying it. Or maybe it's the fact that it kind of reminds me a little bit of Fantasy Zone, but, a lot better than that. I don't know. I really love Stinger, probably way more than I should. It's just a great game. I love it so much. It might be probably my favorite Konami shooter if I had to put a list of those together. This is probably an odd choice for some people, and I think Donkey Kong 3 kind of gets a bad rap in retrospective reviews. Mostly because of those reviews that I saw, they all say, well, it's different from the other two. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I like how weird and strange Donkey Kong 3 is, where all of a sudden it's a single screen shooter and you're trying to defend plants from insects, and for some weird reason Donkey Kong's there. And Donkey Kong seemingly hates Stanley, the Bugman, for some godforsaken reason that's never going to be explained. I really love this game. I think it's just way too strange and unusual for anyone to dislike, even though I'm sure some people do. I love Donkey Kong 3, and that's why it's on this list. Another weird one is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dragon Strike. If you were thinking that this game was going to be an RPG like the other Dungeons & Dragons games on the NES and on the PC and a bunch of other places, well, you'd be wrong. This is a port of a 3D kind of flight simulator, but with dragons, and they turned it into a top-down shooter, which is kind of interesting in its own right. It has you changing elevations to shoot different enemies, which I don't like that as much, but it's still a very fun and unique game to go through. You actually have missions and everything that you have to go on. You have different dragons that you need to kill off, and it can be very interesting to go through and play this. Another arcade port, something that you're going to, well, I'm sure you've noticed by now, a lot of these were ports from arcade games. But Commando is a great run-and-gun shooter. It is very hard. It's not an easy game at all. And the control scheme doesn't exactly help you out too much with this. But you play as the wonderful Commando. Your goal is to kill everyone and save a few people who happen to have been captured, who obviously were not as manly as you are. So you run around killing everything that walks in front of you, and you just try to dodge all of the enemy bullets as best you can. It's like an incredibly good version of Akari Warriors, which is something to be said. This was a bit of a nostalgia grab for me. I love Galaga an awful lot. This is one of the few games on here that I played the arcade version first and then played the NES port. I really loved Galaga. It's one of the only, playing this game is one of the only memories I have of going hunting with my dad, because I didn't do that very often. But we stopped off at a diner, it had a Galaga machine, and I just fell in love with the game there. And then later on we would rent it for the NES every once in a while. But for the most part, I will always remember this game for that strange diner, which is probably not there anymore, and getting a whole bunch of incredibly greasy potato chips and trying my best to do anything in Galaga, because I really did not understand what I was doing. but this is a single-screen arcade shooter, and it improved on basically Space Invaders in every way. So we have come to the end of our list, and the last game on here is 1942. This is a game I played so much as a kid. It was one of the few games that my friends and I owned. I believe my friend Joey owned this game, and we played the hell out of this, trying to get to what we believed was the end of the game. I don't know if it actually is, because it's an arcade game. I think you're just supposed to keep going and going until you get the high score. It's a very fun game. It does get a little repetitive. You don't have a super weapon in this game, which is kind of annoying, but it can be a lot of fun, just because it makes you play a little bit different. I found it's a lot easier to stay in the center of the screen and just avoid the enemies there than it is to stay down at the bottom of the screen while you're playing it. 1942 is one of those games that I've got a lot of nostalgia for, and I love it way more than most people do. There are plenty of other shooters on the NES. The genre was kind of a staple of the arcades back in the 80s, and a lot of these games, it made sense to bring them to the NES to sort of give them a second life on the home console. I mean, heck, just look at Space Invaders and how that helped out the Atari 2600 once it was ported to that console. These 10 games are shooters that I like the best. When they were brought to the home console, they did have some issues. They had to take some changes, and some of them kept the arcade quarter muncher style, which isn't always great for the home console, but with enough determination, you can get through it. We also probably weren't as picky back then, because you didn't have as many games, and you just go and rent them and hope to God that things worked out for you. This is a genre of games that my brother and I rented an awful lot. We didn't have Nintendo Power or anything like that, so we just kind of had to guess. And I'm pretty sure my brother just looked at the label and said, oh, there's a tank or a plane or a submarine in some cases, and said, yeah, that's what we're getting this weekend. Either way, regardless of whether they were good or not, I remember playing them an awful lot. And I've got a lot of fond memories of this genre. I think they got a lot better once they got to the Sega Genesis, though. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and let me know if you call these shooters, shoot-em-ups, shmups, or any other strange name that is out there. And if you want to tell me that I'm saying it wrong, go right ahead. I really do not care. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.